Okay, now to raise the question of how do we broach politics in art, if at all? Let's look at a great work of art by Bataille himself, given that he is responsible for this separation of art and politics that we've been talking about. Art is for transgression of taboos. Politics is for respect for taboos. Art is for eroticism. Politics is for reason. Art is for play. Politics is for rationality. Art is to explore the unconscious. Politics is to be sharply conscious. The two have to be related in somehow. They can't do the job of the other. Which when you've got marching parades and girls and streamers and sparkles and toasty parades happening in politics, and art's all winkly finger like this is a sin, and it starts looking like the Bible, you know, something's gone really wrong in our so-called society yet again. And we're seeing a little bit of a resurgence on that. Yeah, so think of it politically. Can there be left-wing art without taking the Stalinist sort of communist position of subordinating it to a predetermined end or goal? Art for revolution. So let's have a look at Bataille's Blue of Noon, fantastic novel. I put it up there with Story of the Eye, but in a different way. Story of the Eye does not deal with politics directly, it deals with eroticism directly. Blue of Noon deals with politics directly, although still has an erotic function. I think that's the important thing. It's still doing its job as a work of art. You can still watch this or read this. You're watching it in your mind with the images it creates as your release from workaday hours, which are tough, which are grueling, which hurt, especially as one goes on in years and on in decades. Some of the youthful enthusiasm is replaced by aches and pains and repetitions. You've seen it all before. It keeps coming and it keeps regurgitating because you still keep trying to get the message out and deal with a new manifestation of the symptom, etc., etc. Just like it is for athletes. For example, in Australian rules football, 30 years old is old. Once you're 30, you're old. You know, that's still young, right? But for that type of combat sport, collision sport, no, that's old. It's not that they're not still in good shape, potentially. It's just to get at that top level of shape is too hard on a 30-year-old body. Yeah, they got to start training for 30-year-olds, which typically do not play AFL, Australian rules football. And it's similar a little bit with academic work, philosophical work, intellectual work. Yeah, I think that at some point a limit can be reached. So this art-politics distinction becomes even more important in that respect, that there's still work to do, but we're all fucked. Right? Some people are fucked because they could never get to that intellectual level in the first place and are perennially shocked and haunted, collapsed by the truth. So there's that issue as well. So this art politics separation, which is also a relation, is staged very, very well in Blue of Noon. And so I use this text to conclude the investigation, which started off as an ethics and a genealogy of ethics and an ethics of psychoanalysis, moved into an erotics of psychoanalysis, or an erotics of the drive, of the real, of taboo and transgression. And from there into an aesthetics as an outlet for this erotic discharge, for this erotic transgression, for satisfaction of the drive, but also a way that enables us to make meaning and understand the drive, set goals in relation to the drive, as well as get our orgasmic release. And we ended up with this relation with politics. Politics is something different, but as something that still must have a relation to art. Like, I can't say I'm taking a break from politics and doing art and then just do some kind of Heil Hitler sort of bullshit, or just have an art that expresses absolute, but well, if I'm going to do that, or if anyone's going to do that, they've got to be careful what they're doing. Like, Bataille's first novel, he described it as an assault on all dignity, and then burnt it. But apparently Breton saw it, and that's why he thought, get rid of this guy, said Breton. And Bataille was like, what, fuck you too. That was the famous initial dispute. But some of that survived. In Story of the Eye, some of it survived into Blue of Noon, some of it survived into parts of Inner Experience, as he became, I think, more knowingly aware of what was manifesting in him, what was behind, what was the meaning of this tumult. Why does this need to be my vehicle of some kind of satisfaction? What's going on in me? What's going on outside of me that's helping to cause this in my own childhood, in the society around me, and in the childhood of the society around me, in the childhood of the species itself? How do we connect all these issues? So you see how it's criminal not to consider Bataille a philosopher, given how global his themes are. And just because of this prejudice that philosophers have to be quasi-religious, nature-hating, body-hating, sex-negative Christian Platonists. And if you're, I said, maybe God is real, and well, maybe he's a flying spaghetti monster is too. And that's being philosophical. Rubbish. That's not being philosophical. That's being an escapist and hoping that a new version of the symptom is going to stop the problem growing more acute, which it hasn't. We're on the verge of murdering the entire species, have been for the last 70 years. I'm sure the writing was on the wall before that too, before we literally had the bombs to do it, or the viruses to do it, right? As we've seen in recent times. So, Blue of Noon, bizarre, xeni, dirty, and then the accursed share. Okay, Lazar's figure. Puritan, socialist, Christian. So commitment to the left is totally out of the New Testament Bible, which grows out of the Old Testament Bible, and using guilt and shame and sort of innocence about love. And the protagonist Trotman eventually figures this out as the book goes along. Xeni, superficial socialism, dirty. The horror of the real, which can be worked through into something. So, a few points about literature and evil in general. We have, in a sense, what I call the consignment of Dionysus to the devil that happens through the Christian era. But suddenly, to quote the Mick Jagger Rolling Stones line, suddenly we find ourselves with sympathy for the devil, because just like we might have sympathy for the pagan or the atheist or the non-believer in some ways, because a lot of good things have been chucked in the dustbin unduly. So it's only natural. And we never know when we've done that again. We can do that even as rationalists, which sometimes happens. Eroticism is suddenly, and the transgression of taboos is suddenly called irrational, which plays out in the sort of denial of the importance of taboos themselves. Yeah, and the analysis of the Kinsey report, as if everything natural is good, without realizing that nature can sometimes behave in certain ridiculous ways.